Lockdowns always make me feel trapped. Like the world outside is poisoned and the walls around me are the only thing keeping me alive. But that night I learned the walls weren't enough. I was living alone for the first time. My apartment was small, a one-bedroom unit in an old brick building downtown, the kind of place that smelled faintly of dust and boiled cabbage from the neighbors' cooking. When the city announced the curfew, I didn't care much. I wasn't exactly a social butterfly. My life was already a cycle of classes, part-time work, and late-night YouTube rabbit holes. That night, I remember I was sitting at my desk, laptop open, when the alert went off on my phone. A shrill siren, followed by a text from the city, lockdown in effect, shelter in place, doors locked, windows closed, no explanation, no context, just that. I sighed, double-checked my deadbolt and flopped onto the couch. I figured it was another security drill, maybe a gas leak or a protest. Nothing that really involved me, at least that's what I thought. Around 11:00 p.m. the noises started. At first it was faint, a dull thud, like someone dropping a heavy bag in the hallway outside. Then came slow dragging footsteps. Not hurried, not casual, deliberate. I muted my laptop and held my breath. The sound stopped outside my door. I waited, staring at the door like it would answer me. My heart thudded so hard I thought it might give me away. Then came the knock. Not loud, not frantic. Just 3 soft taps, perfectly spaced. I didn't move. Another knock. Louder this time. I crept to the peephole, praying it was a neighbor. Maybe someone locked out. Maybe the landlord. But the hallway was empty. I stepped back, uneasy. Maybe the old building was just creaking. Maybe my brain was messing with me. Then my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Why won't you open the door?" My blood turned to ice. I didn't reply. I couldn't. Seconds later, another message came through. "I can see you." I stumbled back, nearly dropping the phone. My curtains were shut, my blinds closed tight. How could anyone see me? The knock came again, harder this time. I forced myself to stay quiet, crouching low, trying to convince myself it was some sick prank. Maybe one of my friends messing with me, but none of my friends knew my exact address. I peeked through the peephole again, still empty. But when I turned back, my stomach dropped, my blinds were moving. Something was brushing against them from the inside, like fingers. I froze. I hadn't opened the window. The latch was still locked. Yet the blinds swayed gently like something was standing behind them, waiting. I grabbed the heaviest thing I could find, a metal lamp, and crept forward. My hand shook so bad the cord rattled against the base. In one quick motion, I yanked the blinds open. Nothing. Just the glass. The latch still sealed shut. But in the faint reflection, I saw it. A face. Not mine. Not human. Its skin was pale, almost translucent. The eyes were too wide, too dark, staring straight into me. The reflection hung there for a second, even though nothing stood behind me. Then it smiled. I screamed, stumbling back so hard I hit the couch. The lamp slipped from my hand, crashing to the floor. The blinds fell still. The face was gone. My phone buzzed again. "You saw me." My fingers trembled so bad I could barely type back. "Who are you?" Almost instantly the reply came. Already inside. I threw my phone away like it had burned me. My whole body went cold. I darted around the apartment, checking closets, the bathroom, under the bed. Every corner, empty. And then I heard it, a laugh. Soft, from the kitchen. I crept closer, heart hammering in my ears. The lights above flickered as I stepped into the kitchen. There, on the counter, was my phone. I had left it on the couch. Now it sat upright. Screen glowing, camera on, it was recording. I snatched it up, fumbling to shut it off. But before I could, a new notification appeared. A video message. I tapped it against my better judgment. The screen showed my apartment, my living room, the couch, the same angle I was standing in. But I wasn't in the frame. Someone else was tall, thin, standing perfectly still, facing the camera, its head tilted slowly, unnaturally, and then it raised its hand and knocked. The screen went black. I dropped the phone, too scared to breathe. The knock came again, this time from my bedroom door, the one I had left open. I ran. I don't know how I managed to unlock the front door, but I did. I bolted into the hallway, pounding down the stairs barefoot, not stopping until I was outside in the freezing night air. Others were already gathered out there, neighbors pale and shaking. Some were crying. Every single one of them said the same thing. They'd gotten the same texts, the same knocking, the same smile in the glass. The lockdown lifted by morning. Authorities blamed it on a communications error and false alarm. But I know what I saw. I moved out 2 weeks later. Sometimes, late at night, I still get messages from unknown numbers, always the same words, already inside. And every time, I hear it again, that knock. People talk about theaters like they're magical. The lights dim, the curtain rises, and you're transported somewhere else for a few hours. A place where reality doesn't matter and the story takes over. But I don't think I'll ever be able to sit inside a theater again. Not after that night. It was during lockdown. Our city had strict curfews. Most places shut down early, streets empty by 9 p.m. I was taking night classes at the time, and the university's small black box theater was one of the few places still open for rehearsals. I wasn't an actor, not really. I had joined stage crew to pick up extra credits. That night we were finishing late set work for a student play. Only a handful of us were there. 2 actors running lines, the director and me, painting some last-minute props. The building was old, with creaky floors and dusty rafters that always smelled faintly of mildew. Even when people were laughing and working, the place had a strange heaviness, like the walls were keeping secrets. By 8:30 p.m., we were almost done. I remember checking my phone, thinking I'd be home before the curfew hit. Then the power went out. It wasn't a flicker. It wasn't gradual. It was a snap. 1 second, the stage lights glared bright. The next, everything plunged into complete suffocating blackness. The silence that followed was worse. We couldn't even hear the hum of the lights or the faint buzz of the air system. Just nothing. Someone swore under their breath. Another person laughed nervously, fumbling for their phone flashlight. Then from the darkness came a sound I will never forget. A whisper. At first I thought it was one of us. The kind of stupid joke people make when the lights go out. But it wasn't a word, not really. It was like syllables strung together in a language I didn't recognize. Too fast. Too close. It sounded like it was right behind me. I whipped around, shining my phone light. Nothing. Just the empty rows of seats stretching back into darkness. "Did you hear that?" I asked. Nobody answered. The director tried to calm us down, saying the breaker probably tripped. She told us to stay put while she went to check the fuse box. Her footsteps faded into the dark hallway, leaving the rest of us in uneasy silence. The actors whispered to each other, their voices sharp with nerves. I kept scanning the room with my flashlight, convinced I'd see someone or something between the seats. That's when I noticed it. A figure, sitting in the back row. I thought maybe I was imagining it. The light wasn't strong enough to fully illuminate the shadows, but there was a definite shape. A person, slouched in the seat, head tilted slightly. "Hey!" I called out, my voice shaking. "Who's back there?" No answer. One of the actors came over with their phone light, squinting into the dark. "There's nobody there," he said. But I saw it. I swear I did. The whispers started again. This time, we all heard them, fast, layered, like dozens of voices speaking at once. Some deep, some high-pitched, all tangled together in a frantic murmur. The sound bounced off the walls, impossible to track. One of the actors screamed, dropping her phone. The light went out, plunging half the room into darkness again. We huddled together, panicked, calling for the director, but she never came back. Minutes passed, maybe longer. My phone battery was dying, the screen dim. Then, without warning, the stage lights snapped on again. But something was wrong. The set we'd been working on was gone. In its place was a completely different backdrop, peeling wallpaper, a cracked door, a single wooden chair under a spotlight. We stood frozen, staring, and then the chair moved. It scraped across the stage slowly, screeching against the wood. Not like it was being pushed by a person. more like it was being dragged by invisible hands. The spotlight followed it, like the theater itself wanted us to watch. I felt my legs lock up, my throat dry as dust. The actors clutched each other, whispering prayers. Then the whispers stopped. The silence was so complete it hurt. And that's when the figure reappeared. It wasn't in the back row this time. It was on stage, sitting in the chair, a tall, gaunt shape, its head bowed, hands folded neatly in its lap. Its face was hidden in shadow, but the longer I stared, the more I realized something was off. Its hands weren't right. Too long. Too many joints. Fingers twitching as if they couldn't stay still. The chair creaked as it slowly turned toward us. We bolted for the exit. The doors wouldn't budge. No matter how hard we pulled or shoved, they stayed locked. The emergency exit bar wouldn't move, like it had rusted shut in seconds. Behind us, the figure stood. I heard the groan of the wood as it rose to its full height, towering unnaturally tall. Its head snapped up, and though I couldn't see its face, I knew it was looking at me. The lights flickered, and when they came back, it was gone. But the whispers returned, louder than ever. Something brushed past me, cold, like ice sliding over my skin. I dropped to the floor, covering my head, tears streaming down my face. The others were screaming, clawing at the doors, kicking them, begging for someone to let us out. Finally, after what felt like hours, the emergency lights came on. The theater was empty again. The stage was bare. The doors opened without resistance. We spilled into the night air, shaking, crying, gasping like we'd just escaped drowning. Campus security found us huddled outside. They claimed the power outage had lasted less than 15 minutes. But when we checked our phones, more than 2 hours had passed. The director, she was never found. Her purse and keys were still in the lobby, her car parked outside. But she never walked out of that theater. Sometimes I wonder if she's still in there, sitting in the chair, or if the figure finally found a role for her. I never thought lockdowns could feel any worse than they already do. Most of the time they're drills, an inconvenience, an excuse to put our phones down, sit in silence, and stare at the floor until the principal gets on the intercom and tells us everything's fine. But this wasn't a drill, and it's not something I'll ever forget. It happened during my sophomore year at university. It was late fall, that weird time when the air is so cold it hurts your lungs, and every gust of wind feels like it's cutting through your jacket. The day had already been long. 3 classes back to back, a quiz I wasn't ready for, and a group project meeting that dragged on until 9 p.m. By the time I got back to my dorm building, my brain was fried. All I wanted was to crash. The building was shaped like a giant rectangle with hallways running around the outside and a courtyard in the middle. My room was on the 3rd floor, far end of the north wing. Normally the dorms were noisy with music, laughter, doors slamming, college chaos. But that night, the hall was unusually quiet. I remember fumbling with my keys when the alarm went off. A shrill metallic screech filled the building, followed by the automated voice over the PA system. "Attention. Lockdown in effect. Please proceed to the nearest secure location immediately. This is not a drill." My stomach dropped. We'd had drills before, but never at night and never with that tone. This wasn't practice, I didn't think. Instinct took over. Instead of going to my own room, I glanced down the hall and saw a door slightly ajar. No one else was in the hallway, and the echo of the alarm made it impossible to think straight. Without hesitation, I ducked inside. The room was dark. I pulled the door shut softly behind me, trying to quiet my breathing. My heart hammered in my chest, each beat echoing in my ears. I expected to see someone, maybe the resident of the room, staring back at me, annoyed that I'd barged in. But the room was empty. At least I thought it was. It took a minute for my eyes to adjust. The layout was the same as all the dorms. 2 beds, 2 desks, 2 closets. But the beds weren't made, and the desks were bare. The air felt stale, like no one had lived there in months. That struck me as odd. At the beginning of the year, all the dorms had been full. I told myself maybe someone had moved out early. Maybe this was one of those rooms that had gone empty. It didn't matter. For now, it was my hiding spot. I sank to the floor between the bed and the wall, pulling my knees up to my chest. The alarm was muffled through the walls, but it still made my skin crawl. I pulled out my phone, hands shaking, and tried to text my roommate. No service. That's when I heard it. Breathing. Slow. Steady. Not mine. I froze, holding my breath. The sound was faint, but unmistakable. It came from the other side of the room, by the closet. My pulse pounded in my throat. I told myself I was imagining it, that my nerves were playing tricks on me. But the longer I sat there, the more certain I was. Someone else was in the room. I wanted to bolt, but the hall outside didn't feel any safer. The alarm, the announcement, whatever was happening, it wasn't good. I forced myself to stay put, hoping maybe the sound would stop. It didn't. In fact, it grew louder. Slow, rattling, breaths like whoever it was had been holding it in and was finally letting go. I leaned forward just enough to peek past the edge of the bed. The closet door was cracked open. Just a sliver, and through that sliver, I saw it. An eye, wide, staring, fixed on me. My whole body went numb. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. It felt like ice water was flooding my veins. For what felt like forever, we just stared at each other. Me on the floor, paralyzed. Them behind the closet door, completely still except for that ragged breathing. Finally, I managed to scramble to my feet. I backed toward the door, fumbling for the handle, but before I could open it, the closet door creaked wider. A figure stepped out. It was tall, too tall for a student, dressed in dark, shapeless clothes, its head tilted at an unnatural angle like it was studying me. The shadows hid its face, but I knew it wasn't right. The proportions were off. Arms too long, shoulders hunched forward, like it didn't quite fit in its own skin. I bolted. The door banged open as I tore into the hallway. The alarm still screamed, but now it was drowned out by the sound of footsteps, heavy, deliberate, following me. I didn't dare look back. I sprinted down the hall, around the corner, nearly colliding with a group of students huddled against the wall with a resident advisor. They all turned to look at me, eyes wide with confusion. "What's wrong with you?" the RA hissed. "Get down, stay quiet." "There's someone," I gasped, pointing back toward the hallway. But when I turned, the corridor was empty. No footsteps, no figure, just the flickering exit sign casting sickly light on the floor. We stayed like that for nearly an hour until campus security finally gave the all clear. They said there had been a report of an armed intruder near the dorms, but nothing was found. Probably a false alarm. That's what they told us. I tried to believe it. But when I got back to my own room, something was waiting for me. On my desk, lying neatly in the center, was a folded piece of paper. I hadn't left it there. With shaking hands, I opened it. There were only 3 words, written in jagged black ink. "Wrong room tonight."